yourself a pack of these little rat tail files, and they come in all shapes and sizes, and they're pretty handy for getting into some of the detailed areas too. You have the round rat tail file, the curves, and the flat, and all of them have their purposes, so these can come in real handy for you. I find the sanding sticks work a little better than the files. The files don't seem to be very aggressive, but in some areas they come in pretty handy. For instance, on this bowl that we made, when I cut out this circle, right where I started and ended the cut, I have a little notch right there that needs to be taken care of. And since I'm on a curved surface, I can go through here and find the rat tail file that has a curve to it, and I can come back in and work that area until I get rid of that little nub. So they definitely have their uses. And again, this is another Harbor Freight cheapie out of China, but you're not putting them through a lot of stress, so I think they'll hold up pretty well. So I use those some, not as much as the sanding sticks. The last thing, or not the last thing, but the next thing that I use quite a bit of is a little sanding pad. It's basically just a plastic holder that has a foam backing on it that you can wrap your sandpaper around. Again, I cut my own sandpaper to fit these, and these come in very handy because they're comfortable to hold on to, and if you needed to round off these edges a little bit, definitely a tool worth having. So pick one of those up, you'll be happy with that. Here's a little sanding jig that I put together. Had an old drill sitting around, a little corded drill that I wasn't using any longer, and I took this drill and I mounted it upside down on a cut off piece of a 2x4, and I took some steel banding pipe clamp and mounted this drill to this 2x4. Used a couple screws just to give it a little stability. Now this particular drill doesn't have any variable speed or anything, so you get full power the whole time. And I'll show you what I do. I use this to round off corners of projects. If you're doing any segmented turning or anything, or scrolling, this comes in pretty handy for that. Go ahead and get the wheel started and lock it in. And you can use this to round over the corners. Now what I've got installed in the end of this drill, I spoke about that, is a little flat wheel sander. They're fairly inexpensive, and all they are is a series of pieces of sandpaper that you can mount into a drill press. Let me get zoomed in here just a little bit to show you a little better view of this. And again, it's just flaps of sandpaper, and once you get these turning, they're pretty aggressive. So you can definitely take a piece and round the edges over pretty quickly with a tool like this. The nice thing about it is you can use it for other purposes also. Here I've got a little buffing wheel that I can install into the end of it, and I have a wheel that I can put sandpaper on that'll go into the end of the drill also and use it as a little sander. So this is a project that takes just minutes to put together. If you don't have the drill and you have to go out and buy one, just buy a very cheap drill. You don't need much. You know, don't try to get a cordless drill or anything like that. Just get the cheapest drill you can find and chuck up some of these different pieces on the end of it, and you'll have a nice little sanding station. The next sander that I probably couldn't do without here in my scroll saw workshop is a belt sander, and these are miracle workers when it comes to taking a lot of material off quick. Not everybody's going to be able to afford and have one of these, but they're really not that expensive. You can buy the cheaper models for around $100. And basically what they do, and I'm going to turn this on so the noise is going to get pretty high here, so I'll try to talk. But once you get this belt sander turning, make the round edges, clean up the sides, clean up the surfaces. And most of these belt sanders will also come with a side unit that has a wheel sander on it also. This one doesn't happen to have that. It broke a long time ago, so I don't have it. So a nice belt sander, very handy to have. Not a necessity, but sure makes some work easier. The next step in my process for finishing scroll saw projects is what I call beautifying. Now, I'm a minimalist when it comes to finishing scroll saw projects. I almost never use, probably I could say never use, any kind of pigmented dyes. I like the natural look of the wood, and so I generally just finish all my pieces the same way with this lemon oil. what I use, and I buy this at a Myers department store, but I've also seen that Home Depot carries something similar to this called orange oil. And basically what it is, it's a finishing oil for bringing back the beauty of furniture. It's a furniture restoring oil. And the way I use this is I'll either squeeze it onto a cotton rag and apply it, or usually, to make things faster, I use the dipping technique. I'll buy several bottles of this oil and pour them into a Tupperware bowl. I usually leave a rag in there, and I'll take a piece like this that I want to put the oil on, and I'll just start dipping it down in there. And I'll take my rag and just liberally apply this oil so it actually leaks and seeps down into all the little nooks and crannies. And you can see that this does a very quick job of getting this piece finished. The combination of dipping it and using the rag worked well. You can also use a bigger Tupperware container and fill it up deep enough where you can dip your projects totally in. Now this stuff takes a while to dry. Usually I'll let it dry overnight, but I think you can see it really brings out the luster of the wood in these projects. It's not a protection, it's just a beautifier of the wood. So what we'll have to do now is let this piece dry, and usually, like I say, I let it dry overnight. Now I'll take some paper towels before I let this dry and wipe off the excess, and then I'll just take it and set it aside on a drying board, let it dry overnight, and then I move on to the protection part of my process, and I'll show you that next. The final step in finishing scroll saw projects for me is to add a little protection to the project. As I showed you earlier, I generally just dip my projects in lemon oil to bring out the luster of the wood, and to give them a little bit of shine and a little bit of protection for the wood, I use a spray lacquer. In this case I use the Minwax clear aerosol lacquer. Today I've got the clear gloss, but you can also get a semi-gloss and a satin finish in the spray. So that's what I use. I also picked up this little can gun, which is what the name of it is. It's just called the can gun. And what it allows you to do is apply this to the top of your spray can, and it gives you a gun to do your spraying with. This is very handy. They're hard to find, but if you can find one, definitely pick it up. The next thing that I found almost indispensable in finishing these projects is a small Lazy Susan. As you can see today, what I'm going to do is finish off this little clock that I made, and it makes it really easy to apply this finish if you can just spin it around. So the way I use this aerosol and the way it's recommended is to shake it up really good, at least for a minute, and then with the gun start your spray off of the edge of the piece, and we're going to apply, the first coat's going to be a fairly light coat, then we're going to wait 30 minutes, apply a second coat, and then another 30 minutes for the finish coat. And in between each of these coats, I'm going to use a triple-aught steel wool just to smooth the wood out. Now, you're not trying to sand the finish off, you're just wanting to knock the rough bumps off of it. So this is the way I do the finishing. Again, start off the side of the piece, give it a nice, even, light spray. You usually want to stay about 10 inches around. Make sure you cover the whole area, top and bottom. And don't let it drip. You don't want runs. So you want to make this a very light spray, because we're going to add other coats later, so you don't have to apply the final finish now. Now what I'll do is let this dry 30 minutes, come back with some triple-aught steel wool, lightly go over it, apply a second coat, again with the triple-aught steel wool, apply the final coat, the third coat, and then I'll very, very lightly on the final coat after it dries, go over it with the steel wool again just to give it a nice smooth finish. Okay, that's the way I finish my scroll saw pieces. I know others of you have other ideas on how to do this, and if you'd like to share them, send me an email and I'll get them on the website. And speaking of the website, you can visit the site at scrollsawworkshop.blogspot.com. There you'll find other videos, free projects to make, and reviews of different types of scrolling materials. So please stop on by, give us a look, and we'll see you in the next video.